The wind howled like a living beast, tearing across the rocky valley. Dark clouds rolled in from every direction, swallowing the pale light of the alien moon. A lone figure stumbled through the storm, his cloak whipping against his body, his boots sinking into mud and jagged stone. He was human, far from home, stranded on a planet that did not welcome life. Each breath burned his lungs, filled with dust and icy air. Lightning cracked overhead, sharp and blinding, splitting the sky into fragments of white fire. Thunder followed, shaking the ground under his feet. The storm was not natural. It felt angry, as if the very planet wanted him dead. His name was Marcus Hale, a scout from the human frontier fleet. His ship had gone down in the storm's path, broken metal scattered across miles. He alone had crawled from the wreckage, alive but wounded. Now, every step was survival, every heartbeat a reminder that the planet was hunting him. Through the chaos of the storm, his eyes caught something. At first, it looked like nothing but shadow, a jagged mouth in a mountain wall. But as lightning flashed again, he saw it clearly, a cave, dark and deep, a chance for shelter, or perhaps a trap, but he had no choice. Marcus staggered forward, fighting against the push of the wind. The storm tried to drag him back, roaring louder as he neared the cave's mouth. His legs felt heavy, as if unseen hands pulled him down. Still, he forced himself to move, knowing that to remain outside was certain death. The entrance was cold, far colder than the storm outside. He stepped inside, shivering, wiping water from his face. For a moment, silence filled the space. The howl of the wind muted behind him. He allowed a long breath, thinking he had found safety, but the silence was wrong. It was too deep, too heavy, pressing against his chest like invisible weight. His flashlight flicked on, cutting through the darkness with a thin white beam. The walls were rough stone, jagged and sharp, but covered with strange marks. He walked slowly, his boots crunching on loose gravel. Symbols carved into the rock caught his light. Circles, lines, claw-like scratches. They were old, worn by time, yet still carried something unnatural. It was as if the stone remembered pain. The air grew colder the deeper he walked. His breath became mist, hanging like smoke before his face. The cave twisted left and right, deeper and deeper into shadow. He felt as though it guided him inward, drawing him against his will. Bones lay scattered near the floor, broken and brittle. Some looked alien, skulls too long, jaws too wide. But others were familiar, disturbingly human. Their armor was rusted, their weapons shattered, left where they had fallen. Marcus stopped, his pulse hammering in his ears. Every instinct told him to turn back. Yet when he glanced behind him, the cave's mouth seemed farther away. The shadows stretched, as if the cave was swallowing the light itself. A sound stirred, faint at first, like wind passing through stone. But the storm was outside, not here. He turned his head, shining his light across the cave. Nothing moved, yet the sound came again, closer this time like a whisper. His grip tightened on the handle of his blade. The whisper slid across the walls, low and broken. Words formed within the sound, sharp and clear. "You are the first meal in 500 years." Marcus froze, every muscle locking in terror. The light shook in his hand, bouncing across the jagged walls. No shape appeared, no shadow moved, yet the voice was everywhere. It crawled into his ears, sank into his mind. "You came to me," it whispered again, deeper, heavier, hungry. His heart pounded, his breath ragged. The cave seemed alive now, the stone shifting with each echo. He stepped back, but the floor cracked beneath him. Bones shattered under his heel, brittle echoes rising into the air. The smell hit him then, rot and age, dust and hunger. It was the stench of something that had been waiting, not dead, not alive, but trapped. Marcus lifted his light higher. On the walls around him, the marks no longer looked random. They were claws, dragging across the stone in desperation. Deep scars where something had tried to escape. The storm outside raged louder, but in the cave, it was drowned by another sound, a low growl building from the depths. It was ancient, hungry, and awake. The whisper returned, almost laughing. "You are mine," it said. "After so long, you are mine." Marcus gritted his teeth, clutching his weapon tighter. His body screamed at him to run, yet there was nowhere to go. The cave had closed around him, the darkness endless. And in that moment, he knew he had not found shelter. He had walked into a prison, and the prisoner was hungry. Marcus stood frozen in the cave, his breath shaking, the voice echoing through his skull. His light flickered weakly, fighting against the endless dark. Every shadow looked alive now, twisting, breathing, waiting. The words still burned in his mind. First meal in 500 years. He forced himself to move, one slow step at a time. The ground crunched beneath his boots, brittle bones snapping under his weight. Each sound he made echoed too loudly, as though the cave was listening. His heart thumped so hard he feared it would give him away. He lifted his light toward the walls. More carvings appeared, not random scratches, but patterns. Circles joined by lines, jagged shapes like runes. And deeper among them, fresh claw marks, sharp and wet as if made moments ago. The air pressed tighter around him, colder and heavier with each breath. It tasted like iron, thick and bitter. He coughed and nearly dropped his light. The whisper returned, now deeper, heavier, shaking through the stone. "You are small, but alive," the voice murmured. "You carry warmth, you carry blood." Marcus spun, but there was nothing behind him. Only endless dark, stretching further than his light could reach. Something stirred in the shadows, a scrape of claws on stone, a sound too large to belong to any animal he had ever known. He stepped back quickly, pressing against a rough wall. The whisper slid closer, brushing against his ear, though no one stood there. "I remember hunger," it said. "I remember screams." Marcus clenched his blade tighter, his knuckles white. He had fought alien beasts before. He had survived battles with monsters of flesh and machine. But this voice was different. It was inside him, crawling through his thoughts. He tried to steady his breath. He could not run. Not in the storm, not in this maze of stone. The only chance was to keep moving deeper, searching for a way through. His flashlight beam trembled as he pushed forward. The cave widened suddenly into a vast chamber. His light revealed pillars of rock, tall and twisted like broken teeth. The floor was littered with shattered armor, rusted weapons, and piles of bones. Dozens, maybe hundreds, human and alien alike. It was a graveyard, untouched for centuries. Marcus froze again, his chest tightening. Among the bones lay helmets with human insignia. Explorers from Earth, soldiers from old expeditions. All had died here, all had been left to rot in the dark. The voice laughed, a low and hollow sound that shook the chamber. "They thought they could cage me," it said. "They thought they could starve me." A wind stirred, though there was no wind in caves. It swirled the dust and bone fragments into the air, choking him. Marcus stumbled, coughing, waving his arm to clear his vision. In the swirl of dust, a shape appeared. Massive, shadowy, shifting. Not solid, but not empty either. A creature born of hunger itself, neither beast nor ghost. Its eyes glowed faintly, pale like dying stars. And when it moved, the sound of chains rattled through the chamber. Marcus felt the weight of its gaze. It was not just looking at him, it was inside him, pulling at his thoughts, tasting his fear. He tried to fight it, to block it out, but his knees nearly buckled under the pressure. The voice grew louder, echoing from every direction. "You are the first to enter in centuries," it said. "You woke me. You fed me. Now you will sustain me." The chamber trembled as if the cave itself obeyed the voice. Marcus staggered back toward the wall. His blade felt too small, too weak. He aimed his light at the creature, but the beam passed through as though the thing was made of smoke. Yet the hunger was real, the presence crushing, suffocating, impossible to ignore. He tried to think like a soldier. Fear would kill him faster than any monster. If it was once caged, there had to be a reason. There had to be a way to survive, maybe even a fight. The hunger shifted closer, its shadow stretching across the bones. The air grew so cold his skin burned. Its whisper slid once more into his mind. I will taste you slowly, little spark of flesh, it said. 500 years of waiting deserves more than one quick bite. Marcus raised his weapon, his arm trembling. He knew he could not fight the hunger with steel alone, but he refused to kneel. If he was to die here, he would die on his feet. The chamber shook with laughter. The darkness swallowed his light, and the hunger moved to strike. Marcus stumbled backward as the shadows surged. The chamber seemed alive, trembling with each whisper. His light flickered again, weak against the crushing dark. The hunger's presence pressed into his chest, heavy like stone. He could hardly breathe, yet he forced his legs to move. He darted between broken pillars of rock, bones crunching underfoot. The shadow followed, sliding across the walls like liquid smoke, its glowing eyes never leaving him. Everywhere he ran, the voice echoed. There is no escape, it whispered. The storm will not save you. The cave will not save you. Marcus's heart pounded like a drum in his ears. His blade felt useless. He needed something more, something to fight the monster with. His light swept across the chamber, catching something strange. A faint glow, far at the edge of the cavern. Not natural, not fire, but artificial. It pulsed faintly, like a dying machine refusing to surrender. Marcus pushed toward it, desperation driving him. The whisper rose in anger, chains rattling in the dark. Do not touch what is mine, the voice hissed. But Marcus ignored it, climbing over piles of bones to reach the glow. At the far wall, he found it, alien technology half buried in stone. It was a device, ancient but still alive. Strange symbols glowed across its surface. Wires like veins spread into the rock, feeding energy into the cavern walls. This was no natural cave. It was a prison. The hunger had been sealed here, contained by forces older than his people. Marcus reached out, brushing dust from the device. The glow pulsed stronger at his touch. The symbols shifted, rearranging, almost responding to his presence. He felt heat under his fingertips. Not just heat, power. The prison was weak, failing after centuries. That was why the hunger stirred. That was why it whispered so eagerly. The shadow roared, shaking the chamber. Bones rattled like dry leaves, falling from broken piles. You dare touch the chains, it thundered. You dare remind me of their cruelty. The ground cracked beneath Marcus's boots, but he pressed his hand harder against the device. A flood of images struck him. Flashes of an ancient war, soldiers not human but alien. They dragged the hunger into this cave. Not a beast, but a weapon, a thing they had created. It had turned on them, consuming its masters. And so they had built this prison, sealing it for eternity. Or so they thought. Marcus staggered, gripping his head. The visions burned like fire through his mind. The hunger laughed, its voice booming. You see it now, little one, they feared me. They chained me here, but hunger does not die. Hunger only waits. The device sparked, a small burst of light flooding the chamber. For the first time, the shadow recoiled, shrinking back against the far wall. Marcus realized the truth. The prison was weak, but still dangerous to the creature. If he could find a way to restore its full power, he might trap it again. The thought gave him strength. Humans were stubborn. Humans did not bow to monsters. Even here, alone, he refused to surrender. He traced the glowing runes with his fingers. The symbols shifted again, almost like a lock searching for the right key. He tried to focus, to make sense of them. But the whisper cut deep into his mind, twisting his thoughts. You cannot win, it said. They all tried, and they all fed me. Marcus glanced back at the piles of bones. So many had fallen here, warriors greater than him. Yet none were human from his time. And humans had something the others lacked. a refusal to die quietly. He forced himself to concentrate. Each rune lit under his touch, glowing brighter. The air hummed with energy. The chamber shook, stone falling from the ceiling. The hunger screamed, a terrible sound that tore through the cavern. It rushed forward, its shadow stretching, claws like smoke reaching for him. Marcus held his ground. He pressed both hands to the device, pouring every ounce of will into it. The runes blazed with sudden fire. Light burst across the chamber, white and searing. The shadow reeled back, its laughter breaking into a scream of rage. But the light sputtered, fading quickly. The prison was broken, too damaged to hold the hunger forever. It had power, but not enough. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard. He had bought himself time, nothing more. The hunger's whisper returned, low and furious. You cannot fix their chains. Human, you are nothing but meat. Marcus tightened his grip on his blade. Maybe he was only human, but humans had stood against greater monsters than this and lived to tell the story. The storm outside raged, the prison walls shook, and Marcus prepared himself. The fight was only beginning. The hunger would not let him go, but he would not let it win. Marcus stood before the broken prison device, his chest heaving. The faint glow of the runes pulsed weakly under his hands. The shadow had retreated to the far side of the chamber, but it had not vanished. It lingered, swirling like smoke, watching him with pale, hungry eyes. The silence was worse than the storm. It pressed against his ears, heavy and unnatural. Then, without warning, the voice returned, softer this time, almost gentle. You fight well, little human, it whispered, better than the others who came before you. Marcus clenched his jaw, lifting his blade though his arms trembled. He would not be fooled. He knew this was not flattery, but manipulation. Still, the voice continued, winding through his thoughts like a serpent. They starved me, they chained me, but you are different. He forced himself to move along the edge of the chamber, his light sweeping across the walls. The runes carved into the stone flickered faintly, connected to the prison device. If he could restore them, maybe he could strengthen the prison again. But the voice cut through his focus, pulling at his mind. You do not have to die here, it murmured. I can give you power, strength beyond any human. Marcus stopped, his breath catching. The whisper pressed deeper into him, tempting, alluring. I will share my hunger with you, and together we will never fall. He shook his head quickly, his heart racing. It wanted him to surrender, to break the last of his will. But curiosity gnawed at him. What kind of power could it offer? Was there truth in its promise, or only poison hidden in sweet words? The shadows shifted closer, slow and deliberate. Not attacking, not striking, just circling. It was like a predator studying prey, waiting for weakness. You feel it already, do you not? It whispered, the weight of this world crushing you, the storm tearing at you. I could lift that burden. I could make you more than flesh. Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry. Yes, he was tired, his body ached from the crash. His muscles screamed with every movement, but still he raised his blade higher. You want me weak, he muttered under his breath. You want me desperate, so I choose wrong. The whisper laughed, low and endless. There are no wrong choices here, human, it said. There is only survival and death. The runes on the wall flickered again. For a moment, Marcus thought he heard another voice, fainter, older, buried under the hunger's echo. It was not a word, but a warning. The prison was not built to kill the hunger, but to contain it, and any bargain would not set him free. It would set the hunger free. Marcus gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on his weapon. He knew then what the voice truly wanted, not to help him, not to save him, but to trick him into breaking the prison fully. The chains would snap, the hunger would walk again, and he would be its vessel, its shell, its tool. Still, the whisper persisted. Think of your kind, it murmured. Think of your people. With me, you could save them all from the storms, from the endless war of the stars. Do not waste yourself on a broken chain. Become more than human. Marcus's light flickered again, and he caught a glimpse of faces carved into the stone. Not symbols this time, but carvings of warriors long dead. Alien faces twisted in agony. They had all been offered the same bargain, and they had all fallen. The bones around him were proof of their choice. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe slow. He remembered his ship, his crew, his people. They had trusted him to scout new worlds, to survive for them. He would not betray them now, not for a whisper in the dark. He lifted his blade higher, speaking into the silence. "If you want me, you'll have to take me," he said firmly. The chamber quaked at his defiance, dust and stone raining from above. The shadow lashed out suddenly, claws of smoke slicing through the air. Marcus dodged, barely, the strike cutting stone where he had stood. The hunger roared, no longer gentle, no longer patient. The bargain had failed, and now only violence remained. Marcus braced himself, blade ready, his breath sharp and steady. If this was the choice, then he chose humanity. Not power, not temptation, but defiance. The runes glowed faintly once more as if answering his resolve. The prison stirred, weak but alive. The hunger hissed in fury, chains rattling in the dark. "You will break, human," it thundered. "You will beg for my gift before the end." But Marcus only raised his weapon higher. Fear burned in his chest, but so did fire. The fire of every human who refused to kneel. And though the cave shook and the shadows closed in, he stood his ground. The cave shook as the hunger roared, its shadow swelling across the chamber. Marcus steadied his breath, his blade clutched tight, his eyes locked on the pale glow of the monster's shifting form. He had refused the bargain, and now there was no turning back. The whisper that once coaxed now thundered in rage. "You will kneel, human. All flesh kneels before hunger." Marcus stepped forward instead of retreating. His boots crunched over brittle bones, his light trembling but steady. He felt fear, yes, but he felt something else as well. A defiance that burned hotter than the storm outside. Humans had faced monsters before, and they had not broken. The hunger lashed out with claws of smoke and shadow. Marcus dodged, rolling across the jagged floor, his blade sparking against stone. He came up fast, slashing toward the glowing eyes. The blade passed through the shadow, harmless, but the hunger recoiled anyway. It did not bleed, yet it reacted, as if the weapon carried more weight than steel. Marcus realized then that the fight was not of flesh and bone. It was will against will, spirit against spirit. If he stood strong, if he refused to yield, he could wound it, not with steel, but with defiance itself. The hunger circled him, laughter booming through the cavern. "Brave little spark," it hissed, but sparks burn out, sparks fade. Marcus kept moving, refusing to give ground. His eyes scanned the chamber, searching for anything he could use. Among the piles of bones lay broken weapons, ancient and rusted. Shields cracked, spears shattered, but some still glimmered faintly. Tools of warriors who had fallen before, their fight unfinished. He grabbed a shard of metal, jagged and sharp. The moment his hand closed on it, the hunger shrieked. The shard glowed faintly, as if remembering battle. These were not just weapons, they were fragments of resistance. The will of the fallen lingered within them, waiting for another to carry the fight. Marcus raised both his blade and the shard. The glow spread, faint but steady. The hunger hesitated, its smoky form rippling as though struck by unseen chains. "You dare," it snarled. "You are nothing, you are alone." "I am human," Marcus growled back, "and humans don't kneel." He lunged forward, striking with the shard. The blade of shadow twisted away, but the strike cut through its form. A scream shook the cavern, loud enough to crack stone. The hunger reeled back, its pale eyes flaring brighter. For the first time, it sounded pained. Marcus pressed the attack, swinging, slashing, shouting with every strike. The weapons of the dead warriors glowed stronger in his hands. Each blow carried more than his strength. It carried theirs, the will of those who had fallen, united with him. The hunger shrieked, retreating into the corners of the chamber. But the shadows never left, circling, watching, waiting to strike again. Marcus collapsed to one knee, gasping for air. His muscles burned, his vision blurred. The glow faded slightly, as if warning him that this power was fleeting. He had hurt the creature, yes, but not defeated it. The prison had weakened, the chains nearly gone. The hunger would keep coming, endless, patient, waiting for him to falter. "You fight like fire," the whisper returned, low and venomous. "But fire burns itself out." Marcus pushed himself back to his feet, sweat dripping down his face. His arms trembled, but he raised his weapons again. "If fire is all I have," he said through gritted teeth, "then I will burn you down with me." The hunger screamed again, shaking the chamber. Its shadow swelled higher, claws stretching from wall to wall. The runes on the prison walls flickered, reacting to the clash of wills. Chains of light sparked faintly, snapping into place for brief moments before fading again. The prison was trying to respond, but it was too weak. Marcus staggered toward the device, weapons still raised. He placed the shard against the runes, forcing its glow into the prison. The symbols blazed for a moment, brighter than before. The hunger shrieked in fury, slamming against the walls, shaking the cave like an earthquake. Marcus held on, pouring every ounce of strength into the device. He could not restore it fully, not yet, but he could hurt the hunger. He could remind it that humans did not die quietly. The chamber filled with a clash of screams and light. Marcus's defiance echoing against the creature's rage. He knew this was only the beginning. He knew he could not win with weapons alone. But he had proven one thing. The hunger could bleed, and humans would never bow. The chamber groaned like a wounded beast, stone raining down from the ceiling. Marcus clung to the ancient device, his arms trembling, his breath ragged. The shard in his hand still glowed faintly, though the light was fading fast. The hunger's scream echoed through every crack in the cave, shaking his bones. "You cannot hold me," the voice thundered. "I am hunger eternal, and you are nothing but dust." Marcus staggered to his feet, his body screaming with pain, yet his eyes burned with the fire of defiance. If this was the end, he would not run. He would stand until the last breath left his body. The shadow surged again, larger than before. Its pale eyes flared, filling the chamber with a sickly glow. Chains of light flickered weakly along the walls, then shattered under its fury. The prison was breaking, and Marcus knew he had only moments left. He moved toward the center of the chamber. Bones crunched under his boots, dust swirled around him like smoke. He planted his feet, raising both his blade and the glowing shard. His hands shook, but his stance was steady. He was one man against a nightmare, and he refused to yield. The hunger circled him, its voice now a chorus of whispers. Every word pressed into his skull, tempting, taunting. "You cannot win, little spark," it hissed. "Join me, and you will never feel fear again." Marcus shouted back, his voice raw. "I don't want freedom from fear. I want freedom from you." The shadow lunged, claws of smoke sweeping down like a storm. Marcus dove aside, rolling hard, pain flaring in his ribs. He came up swinging, his blade slicing through the dark. The hunger shrieked, staggering back, not from steel but from will. Each strike carried his fire, his refusal to kneel. The shard pulsed brighter, as if feeding on his defiance. Marcus pressed the attack, shouting with every strike. The shadows recoiled, the pale eyes flickering. For the first time, the hunger seemed uncertain. "You are not like the others," it growled. "They beg, they cry, but you—" Marcus cut across its voice with a furious strike. "I am human," he roared, "and humans don't break." The chamber shuddered, cracks splitting across the ceiling. Rocks tumbled, dust rained, but Marcus kept fighting. He swung until his arms burned, until his lungs felt like fire. The hunger lashed back, claws slamming him into the wall. He gasped in pain, his blade nearly slipping from his hand. Blood ran down his arm, his vision blurred. But still he stood. He stumbled back toward the device, dragging himself across the broken stone. The runes flickered, weak but waiting. He pressed the shard into them, forcing its glow into the machine. The runes blazed, chains of light snapping across the chamber. The hunger screamed, slamming against the invisible bonds. Smoke twisted, pale eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot bind me," it roared. "Your flesh is weak, your bones are dust." Marcus pressed harder, his body nearly giving out. His vision dimmed, his strength fading. But deep inside, the fire still burned. The fire of every human who refused to die quietly. The chains glowed brighter, binding the hunger. For a moment, Marcus thought he had won, but the device sparked violently. It was too damaged, its power failing. If he stopped, the prison would collapse. The hunger would be free forever. Marcus understood then what he had to do. The prison needed more than the shard. It needed a life, a will strong enough to fuel it. His heart clenched with fear, but also with resolve. He could give it what it needed. He could give himself. The hunger laughed, sensing his thought. "You would burn yourself away for nothing," it mocked. "You cannot kill hunger, fool." Marcus smiled weakly, blood on his lips. "Maybe not," he whispered, "but I can starve you." He pressed both hands to the device, pouring every ounce of strength, every drop of fire into it. The runes exploded with light, chains flaring brighter than the storm outside. The hunger screamed, thrashing, its form tearing apart under the blaze. Marcus's body burned with pain, but he did not let go. He held until his breath failed, until his strength vanished. The last thing he saw was the chamber filled with light. The hunger's shadow ripped apart, the cave trembling as if the world itself roared. Then silence. The cave glowed with searing light. Marcus's body trembled, his hands fused to the ancient device. The runes blazed with fire, brighter than a star. Chains of light whipped through the chamber, binding the hunger, tearing it apart. The shadow screamed, its voice shaking the mountain itself. "You cannot kill me," it roared. "I am endless. I am eternal." Marcus gritted his teeth, his vision dimming. "Then you'll stay in the dark forever," he whispered. The chamber cracked, stone falling all around him. The storm outside raged louder, but its fury was nothing compared to the roar within. The hunger twisted, its pale eyes flickering in fear for the first time. It slammed against the chains, clawing, shrieking, but the prison tightened. The light burned brighter, devouring the shadow. Marcus felt his strength draining away, piece by piece. Every heartbeat poured into the prison, every breath becoming fuel. He thought of his crew, of Earth, of humanity waiting in the stars. He thought of the warriors who had fallen here, their bones now at rest, their fight carried by him. And he thought of the whisper that had tried to tempt him. He smiled weakly, blood on his lips. Humans did not kneel, not to monsters, not to hunger, not to fear. The light consumed everything. The hunger shrieked one last time, and then silence, ending a victory. When the silence fell, the chamber was still. The shadows were gone. The whisper had vanished. The runes glowed softly, steady now, repaired by sacrifice. The prison held once more, strong as it had been 500 years ago. Marcus lay at the base of the device, his body broken but at peace. His blade and shard lay beside him, faintly glowing with the last of the fight. The storm outside faded, the winds calming, the world itself sighing in relief. He had sealed the hunger again. He had starved it for another eternity. But he had given his life to do it. No one would know his name here. No one would sing of his battle. Yet the cave would remember. The runes would remember. And the hunger would never forget the human who defied it. In the silence, his light burned on, a symbol that humans, even alone, could stand against the darkness. And when, ending B, twist, when the silence fell, Marcus collapsed to the ground. The prison glowed faintly, chains holding the hunger back. But something was wrong. The runes flickered unstable, as though feeding not only on the hunger, but on him. Marcus gasped for breath, his chest heavy. He thought the fight was over. But then a whisper stirred, softer than before. Not outside him, not in the chamber, but inside his own mind. "You cannot cage me forever," it murmured. "You brought me into you. Little spark, you carried me with your fire." Marcus's eyes widened, his hand clutching his chest. The glow of the runes dimmed, but his veins glowed faintly, pale like the hunger's eyes. The prison was sealed, yes, but at a price. The hunger was no longer free in the cave. It was bound inside him, waiting, whispering, every heartbeat a reminder, every breath a struggle. Marcus staggered to his feet, his blade heavy in his hand. He looked at the glowing walls, at the bones of those who had fallen. He had won, yes, but not truly. The hunger lived on, carried by him, and as he walked out of the cave into the storm, the whisper followed, laughing softly, "You are mine now, human, whether you admit it or not." The cave was quiet again, the prison sealed, but far beyond its walls. The hunger had found a new vessel, and its time of waiting had only just begun.